So Dipen Rughani, you CEO and Managing Director at the Newland Global Group. You are based in Australia and you have very close ties with India and doing business and bringing thought leaders and business opportunities between the two countries to fruition. And one of the sectors that we wanted to focus with you today was the pharmaceutical sectors, and wanted to kind of pick your brain on the expertise that you bring to the table. So thank you for joining us. What are the key sectors within pharma that encourage collaboration between India and Australia, in your opinion?
Robin, first and foremost, thank you for having me on board today in your conversations. Appreciate being here. And thank you for looking at the Australia-India relationship and the importance that it plays today in the Indo-Pacific and particularly in the geopolitical environment. Look, to understand, the pharmaceutical industries, I think it's important to just get the background of, both Australia and India. And by getting the background of both countries, it will be made much, much clearer on how, the pharma sector could encourage some sort of collaboration between India and Australia. For me today, India is widely considered to be the pharmacy of the world, right? It has a strong domestic presence, but even more so, it has a solid global export arm, which has given it credibility and depth and width. It was also, if you go back to the beginning, almost for this pandemic, it was a trusted supplier for critical pharmaceuticals. For example, hydroxychloroquine. Hard to pronounce that name, but we've got it out. It was provided to over 120 countries around the world through the recent crisis. And it showed India's pharmaceutical strength, and it allowed the world to see how quickly India can move with quality products. The strength of India, is huge. Is within its huge presence of something like 3,000 plus, pharmaceutical companies, about 10,000 manufacturing facilities, and India is a source for close to or over 60,000 generic brands across 60 therapeutic categories. So it is also well known for its low cost in manufacturing, and analysts and people within the industry report that India could be 33% lower as far than the US in manufacturing pharmaceuticals. India caters, I guess, to at least 50% of the global demand for vaccines, 40% for generic drugs, 40% of the generic drugs that are used in the US, 25% of medicines that are exported into the UK, and it's the third largest producer in the world of pharmaceuticals, and ranks number 13 by value in the world. So out of the top 20 global generic companies, 8 are from India, and recently the Indian government announced a $390 billion scheme to promote the development of 3 industrial parks that are focused on manufacturing active pharmaceutical ingredients and bulk drugs, so APIs and bulk drugs. The Indian market, the current market size for pharmaceuticals, for the pharmaceutical sector in India is about 38 to 40 billion US dollars, and it actually does attract quite a large amount of investments from foreign investors. The domestic pharmaceutical market turnover reached about $20 billion in 2018, which was up about 10% from 2017. And with the growing as penetration of health insurance and pharmacies that tend to rise. So at a 10% is quite a substantial growth in year on year. From that, when you look at the 60,000 generic brands across 60 therapeutic categories, more than 500 different APIs and 8 out of 20 global generics companies are from India. So you could see that global presence that India has, the depth of manufacturing and the quality. I say quality because of the fact that it is exporting to developed nations where quality is of the paramount importance, such as US with US FDA and Australia with TGA. So I believe that the Department of Pharmaceuticals in India aims to make the country a hub for end-to-end drug discovery. And it's just released a report called the Pharma Vision 2020. So that in itself will assist the Indian companies to grow even more and expand to destinations that they haven't made it to so far. India has the largest number of US FDA compliant pharma plants. There's more than 262 active pharmaceutical ingredients plants as well, which is the largest outside of the USA. And relating between Australia and India, India has a number of TGA approved plants. In fact, all of the US FDA approved plants that I mentioned earlier and EU audited facilities are actually TGA endorsed production units. So, when you look at that, there is great, the forward thinking of the Indian manufacturer to get approvals in US FDA, EU, and TGA is significant. In fact, what is quite interesting is that the TGA approval is the first audit taken by most Indian companies and puts it in a system, in a place of clearance for international regulatory agencies like the US FDA and EMA, which is, again, for us, it's great because, as I talked to you about the Australian market, the opportunities between the two countries will be, quite obvious. So moving on to the Australian market, as I said before, similar to the US FDA administration, Australia has the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is TGA. And that's Australia's regulatory authority for therapeutic goods, including things like prescription pharmaceuticals and so on. Obtaining a TGA approval to the market, to the Australian market, and supplying pharmaceuticals is a necessary requirement for new therapeutic products to enter Australia. So the other thing to remember is that although acquiring a TGA approval, or however, when acquiring a TGA approval, it's not always enough for pharmaceuticals to crack, or the Indian pharmaceuticals, or any pharmaceuticals to crack the Australian market. It's not that easy. Just get a TGA approval and here you go. The government subsidizes pharmaceutical costs so that vital medicines are available and affordable to patients. Normally, at least one treatment for most diseases or conditions is subsidized by the government. And I guess since the retail costs of pharmaceuticals can be prohibitive, particularly for some patients, if the first choice of medicine, for example, is not listed on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, a physician usually prescribes an alternative that is subsidized by the PBS. So consequently, securing a PBS listing is considered a major regulatory barrier to market entry. But even though it's considered that, you know, if you have the patience and the endurance to go through and the foresight to have the TGA approvals for manufacturing and production facilities in India, the next step is the PBS, because, you know, once you've got through the PBS and you're listed, it makes life a lot easier for the pharmaceutical manufacturers. The other thing that you know that looks at the PBS is, you know, Australia's healthcare system is quite universal, and it comes at a high price, an economic price to the country. So managing the national sort of, you know, monies or purse whilst providing access to, excuse me, new therapeutics kind of will remain a big challenge. And the way that the government, you know, performs this balancing act is via the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, which is the PBS. So, you know, recently there was a new report by the Institute of Integrated Economic Research, which highlights that Australia, particularly recently, you know, has a strategic sort of vulnerability on supply of medicines. And this is essential now because we're going into the new world. So, you know, Australia imports 90% of its medicines, you know, with around 1/3 of Australians reliant on daily prescriptions. However, you know, the country is at the tail end, we feel, of a lengthy global supply chain. You know, I guess being at the tail end, what happens is that you kind of, you know, well, I guess there are many single points of failure, right? So it's important for Australia to pick up this game, to be right at the forefront. And this is where India can help. You know, I guess also Australia has extremely limited and diminishing manufacturing capacity across all sectors of products, apart from vaccine manufacturing. So over the last decade, 15, 20 years, because Australia has become, you know, had become close to China, and a lot of the manufacturing has shifted over to China, it became very limiting for manufacturing in Australia. It was very cost prohibitive. So, you know, the report, I guess the report argues, there are some smaller industries with capacity for niche markets, you know. However, the government regulations around price and around the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme has forced the large majority of off-patent products manufacturing. So, you know, you know, where the vast majority of life-saving medicines sit offshore, which is actually not a good thing for Australia. That's where the vulnerabilities come in. And Australia has almost no capacity to manufacture any active pharmaceutical product for most of its products listed, for most of the products that are listed in the WHO, which is a list of essential medicines. So you can see how, you know, the picture is now becoming a little bit more clear about how India can help Australia, how there's opportunities. Again, you know, Australia, following that, Australia has incrementally outsourced almost all of its medicine supply chain to the global markets. And we in Australia import significant portions of our medicine from the United States. But a significant component of that USA medicine supplies comes from China. So, you know, although we're buying from the US, a lot of that APIs and all of the components are actually coming from China. So, you know, what are the opportunities? You know, so COVID, I guess, has taught us that there an urgent need for convergence in the life sciences sector, particularly where research and development is concerned, startups are concerned, biotech, pharma, digital reforms, all of them need to come under one umbrella for an efficient delivery and an effective responsiveness. We need investments in innovation and, discovering new ways of engaging and an integrated way of working together, which involves sharing skills, resources, infrastructure, and exclusively sharing knowledge.
Thanks, Dipen. There was a lot of insight there in what you just shared with us, a lot of in-depth awareness and knowledge. But if I could just ask you to now provide me some brief snapshots, is where do you see the scope for growth in Ayurveda and homeopathy in the Australian market at this moment?
Sure. Look, that's another good question, because it was only in 2019 that there was an education delegation that went to India with the education minister, the Honorable Dan Tehan. And with him, he took a number of vice chancellors and chancellors and technical guys within the education sector. And at that time, the Western Sydney University, which is one of the biggest universities in Australia, and is spread across the largest, I guess, populated areas of Australia, and the largest Indian population or Asian population is now evolving in Western Sydney. So Western Sydney University signed a memorandum of understanding with the All India Institute of Ayurveda. Now that is important because there is at the moment, with Australians by and large, who are conscious of looking at natural medicine. There's a lot of people here that participate in yoga, in meditation. They go to a number of retreats in India. There are a number of Ayurvedic centers, private Ayurvedic centers that are opened up throughout Australia. In fact, I, on a regular basis, go to our Ayurvedic center here in Sydney and have an Abhyanga massage on a regular basis. But what this memorandum, has done is, first and foremost, it was instrumental that it was signed at the Indian Ministry of Ayush. Now, Ayush, as you know, stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, Saurikpa, and Homeopathy. It was also signed in front of Sri Ramesh Bokharia. Now, he's the HRD manager, along with our Honorable Dan Tehan. But what that says is that in signing the MOU, both governments and both institutions are committed to taking the collaboration to the next level by identifying specific areas of collaboration in education, in research, and practices of traditional medicine, while ensuring the quality standards. And also by encouraging investments in traditional medicine related infrastructure. These are important factors to know, because when you have the government behind you and when you have academia and institutions backing that up, it can only go one way, which is in the positive direction. So, India is definitely a priority country for Australia. And the signed MOU is another historic landmark for the healthcare industry, not only for the two countries, but the world as a whole, which looks at combining, things like data-driven, precision-based technologies and Ayurvedic medicine, which will create a valuable contribution to the current goals of providing, a safe healthcare system for the world, right? These are the kind of things that are happening between India and Australia that really excel both countries forward, particularly in that Ayurvedic sector. I
That's
only
right.
mentioned one. I only mentioned one because you know, it's a prolific one.
Thanks, Dipen, for that. Well, I think let's move quickly to the biotech sphere. Australia is famous for its cutting edge research, including in biotech. And this is a statement of fact. How can this prowess become the basis of stronger bilateral bonds between India and Australia, in your opinion?
Sure, sure. Thank you, Robin. Yes, look, I think biotech and pharmaceuticals go hand in hand, and this is essential to understand how the two countries can work together. So, you know, Australia is a leader in R&D for biotech research and development. In fact, in the 2016 Scientific American Scoreboard, it placed Australia as number 5 globally in an assessment on innovation potential for the bio or in biotech. Australia is also in the top 10 most competitive locations for research and development. The Australian biotech sector has attracted tremendous interest from pharmaceutical companies around the world wanting to invest. And beyond biopharma, which contributes about 70% of the Australian biotech sector, Australia has a strong biotech potential and making its presence felt globally in areas such as marine biotechnology, dairy biotechnology, environmental, sustainable water use, agricultural and industrial biotechnology. What's also good is that the IP-based Australian economy can amplify and accelerate India's growing bio-research services, which is the second largest growing sector after biopharma. India's bioeconomy is constantly going up, and the targets for that sector are, you know, around, or by 2025, are around $100 billion, which is quite substantial. So I guess from the point of view of how Australia and India can sort of collaborate, India offers a low cost of innovation and a low risk of failure. It offers, you know, cost arbitrage to value arbitrage, if you want to take it that way. Australian companies can do more innovation in India, supported by its strong IP frameworks. India's market offers tremendous opportunities in co-creating and global scale production. Large Australian companies like CSL, which is leading the innovation in biotherapies in Australia, probably globally. You know, leading animal healthcare companies have no presence in India. So CSL, animal health companies need to look at some sort of presence in India, which allows them access to a great market. I guess, you know, under the new education policy that India has just released, Australia can support India in building its life science workforce through its pharmacy education and skills development, short courses, short technical courses in medical specialities, you know, short courses, online modules, all those kind of things Australia is very, very strong at. And India's National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research is a great foundation for building the life science sector, and a great opportunity or a great foundation or center that Australian companies can go to. India can also explore Australia's expertise in healthcare delivery to remote areas. You know, Australia is by and large living on the coastal line, but in the rural areas, there's quite a population. And so they've created excellent delivery systems to remote areas, data analytics techniques and so on to predict future demand for the health sector. Those kind of things are important. Indian institutions can learn from Australia's research ecosystem, which has witnessed strong life science acceleration in the academic systems, followed by exciting spin-outs facilitated by university industry partnerships and so on. So there's major lessons to be learned there. And Australia and India can, together identify potentially top 10 research areas, that such as virology or epidemiology or neurosciences or stem cells and those kind of areas. Government grants supported by industry should be provided to establish this quality sort of output for both countries.
In Australia and India are now in the throes of establishing a very, very close relationship. Things are coming together. The puzzle is beginning to take shape. You are one of the Indians based in Australia who are trying to promote and be at the forefront of this change that is coming about. And keeping the pharma sector in mind, my final question to you would be, what do you think are the hurdles that exist within the greater collaboration in pharma between the two nations? And how do you think these challenges can be addressed and overcome, being as you see it from your perspective?
Sure. I think, Robin, the main areas here I would suggest would be affordability, accessibility, and quality. I believe these are the very core of the Indian pharma vision. And what's required between the two countries is a deep awareness and recognition of each other's strengths. I think that's essential. I think Australia and India can work together on the launch of a new sort of chemical entities, complex generics, drug discovery, translational research, community health delivery, and incremental innovation of research and development products. India seriously offers a cost-effective opportunity for commercialization and scaling up of technology, supplemented by its large and diverse sort of demographic profile, which could offer cheaper and time-efficient drug recruitment and clinical trials for Australian companies, particularly in the biotech sector. Both countries can work together on drug repurposing, which is repositioning, a strategy that enables the reuse of existing licensed drugs for new medical symptoms and can effectively reduce drug development time, the preclinical trials phase time, and substantially reduce costs. Both countries can together identify new vaccine candidates. I think that's important too in this current climate, particularly in infectious diseases, focus on non-communicable lifestyle diseases, critical therapies, and animal therapeutic products. I think these are the areas that we can see opportunities for collaboration, and I think these are very good researched opportunities that we've kept an eye on for a long time, because we've actually acted for a very, very large Indian pharmaceutical company in Australia and advised them. And one of the things that we, one of the most important things that we learned from this experience was that, although the Indian government has Make in India, and the goal is to produce in India, the reason why TGA is important and highly regarded and respected globally, and Australia is regarded as a high-grade manufacturing country, is because they produce the best. Now, as I said earlier, 90% of Australia's medicines are imported. With the New World Order, with the advent of the aggression of China and the unreliability of the US, there is a distinct opportunity now for particularly Indian manufacturers of pharmaceuticals to consider Australia as a manufacturing destination. Now, purely because Australia has the breadth and width and the opportunity to produce medicine here, and there are a number of companies that we've spoken to that are happy to joint venture. The other thing is that what the Indian companies traditionally think is that Australia is too small. But Australia's doorstep, you've got the Pacific Islands, millions and millions or tens of millions of people. Australia is highly regarded in the Middle East, and the Middle East import a lot of products that are manufactured in Australia. And up until recently, Australia was exporting into China. But what I'm trying to say to the Indian manufacturers is, don't just look at Australia as a market to sell your generics. Maybe invest in some biotech companies. Also consider manufacturing in Australia, because from a business perspective, it makes sense.
Dipen Rughani, thank you so much for your time and for your very valuable insights. I go away having learned that much more about the relationship and symbiosis between the two countries in the field of pharmaceuticals. So once again, thank you very much for speaking to India Global Business.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate your time. Take care.